Hello everyone, this is Ethan coming at you from the editing booth of the Pathfinder Report. Joel and I spoke after this episode was done recording, and we decided that it would be best to put a content warning on the front end of the episode. So, content warning. This episode discusses harm to children. Listener discretion is advised. Thank you for choosing the Pathfinder Report, and now I'll hand it over to Joel.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pathfinder Report. My name is Joel Grewe, and I'll be running point as your host today. In the studio, shortly with me, is a guy named John Cusey. He's going to be our guest, and today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and its impact on families. But before we bring him in, I want to give you, as our viewing audience, an introduction to him. John is the Executive Director of the Institute for Families and Technology, otherwise known as IFT. He has more than 2 decades of policy experience at the state level and in the executive and legislative branches of the federal government. He started his career at Capital Resource Institute. That's the Focus on the Family affiliate in California. Went on to be the executive director of the Congressional Pro-Life Caucus, chaired by Congressman Smith. Before joining IFT, he was the senior VP of External Relations at American Enterprise Institute for Public Policy. In addition, he served as a senior counselor for policy and legislative affairs at U.S. DHHS. Health and Human Services? Yeah. Spent 7 years working in Congress, press secretary, legislative director, executive director for caucus. He's owned a small business, served as a U.S. park ranger, and taught AP government for high school, which I find oddly familiar. With that, we're glad to have him. Let's get to the conversation. Well, John, welcome to the Pathfinder Report. We're really glad you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. All right. Now, I've done a little bit of your intro, so you don't have to sit through the awkwardness for the people on it, because I hate it, and I figured everyone else probably doesn't either. Mm-hmm. But I mentioned on the intro that you've spent about 2 decades or a little more in policy of some kind. Capitol Hill, HHS, think tanks out in California, etc. But now you're working in family and technology, the intersection of that. And its impact, obviously, on kids, right? Like, what pulled you into that?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. My whole career has really been around protections for children, fighting for families, and I've done it in a lot of different spaces, as you said, from Department of Health and Human Services to Congress to other executive branch areas. I was the director of the House Pro-Life Caucus for a while under Chris Smith from New Jersey, and did some parents' rights work in California as well. So children and families have been my career through line.
Well, you're obviously not scared of doing something hard. I think parental rights work in California is the belly of the beast.
Yes, it was very challenging. But I think everyone really comes to this issue. Everyone who works in the issue around digital technology harms to children kind of comes through it through the lens of their own children and their own family. And I think everybody has a story, and everybody has family members that have been impacted by the addictive nature of social media algorithms, AI chatbot, kind of emotional bonding that's now coming online. And I think that those are things that I saw impacting my kids as a father and my niece and nephews. And it felt like there needed to be some work to balance that playing field so that parents weren't kind of fighting with one hand behind their backs when they're trying to protect their kids.
Sure. So is that what Institute for Family and Technology does? Is that kind of the space you try to occupy?
Yeah, I mean, we would love to see a world where parents don't have to worry about these companies and their products kind of getting around them, getting around their church, and trying to addict their kids and create negative perceptions of their faith, of any of that. So we dream of that world, and we think that's possible. And we've actually seen little snippets of that.
Progress?
Well, so I'm just going to tell a story.
By all means, please.
Let's go off script for a second here. We didn't really have the counter narrative, which is like, what does it look like when kids aren't on their screens
all the time? Yeah,
because it's so it's everywhere, right?
It's pervasive.
Every where you look. But we have done something. One of the issues we worked on is getting cell phones out of schools from the beginning, from the first bell to the end bell.
I used to work with Alec on that. Very cool.
And so now what we've had is, and by the way, that was an effort to take distraction away from learning.
From the classroom. Sure.
Right. But what we found is something different. It actually had a very different impact.
Oh.
And that is that, for example, there's a school in Massachusetts that we heard from after they did a bell-to-bell cell phone ban.
Cell phones, yeah.
And they noticed that there was a spike in the lunch orders after they implemented this.
Really?
And you think, what?
Yeah,
They weren't planning on this. They didn't understand what was happening.
Okay.
And then they thought, well, are the kids just throwing away more of their food? And they found out that the kids, the food waste had gone down. And then they realized the phones in the lunchroom were keeping kids from eating the most basic human
That's a certain level of addiction
function.
that's terrifying, actually, when you think about it.
But
that's really good for the outcome, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then you have these reports from teachers. I used to be a high school teacher.
Yep.
Of these kids interacting
in
the
ways they
lunchroom,
didn't used to.
playing
Right.
Uno, playing these games together.
Sure.
We even have teachers thrilled about a food fight because there's life, back in this space that it was deadened.
That's
right?
Awesome.
And so we now know that if you remove this constant dopamine, cortisol attack on a kid's brain, that they come alive more, which means that when that's not removed, it is snuffing them out a little bit at a time. So we have, and then there's a recent study that actually didn't show much of a difference in educational outcomes related to phone bans, which we didn't expect. They've only been around for 1 or 2 years in most places.
Not a lot of data yet.
Yeah, not a lot of data,
Sure.
but there was a measurable increase in children's well-being, which we then expect to translate into better outcomes.
Sure.
But even if you're just increasing kids' well-being, which name me
You say
another...
just? That seems like a really good outcome
it's
on its own.
probably... that's harder.
Yeah.
In many ways, especially when you do social science research and control for everything. Any intervention that actually increases a child's well-being is so hard.
That's a
to
broad
find.
spectrum improvement versus a very narrow spectrum improvement.
Yeah.
Broad spectrum improvements are much... Yeah, I used to be a demographic researcher back in the day. So I get that. And I'm like, that's actually a higher bar to get to, but a rarer one. That's really cool. That's really cool. All right. So related to that.
Yeah.
AI today is basically showing up in every aspect of life, right? In some form or another.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing up classrooms, obviously on our phones. You see all the apps and the different things, and sometimes we don't even realize we're using AI. In this way, at a certain level, Apple Maps, Google Maps is an element of AI. There's an element that's built into there, and then so in that regard, and that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's a little more front-facing now than it used to be. Obviously, you have your ChatGPT and Claude and all the different elements there, but there's a lot of stuff that's beyond that. It's even showing up in toys now. And there's a question, there's a group that's like, AI is evil. Full tilt, anything AI is bad. Okay?
Right.
And there's the constant war against the EM dash or too long writings.
Right,
Okay. And as someone who used to use the EM dash before it was a thing, I'm like, but that was useful. That's actually good grammar, but no one uses it, so suddenly it looks like a signal. Anyway, we're not making a statement that AI collectively is good or bad here. But
not
more
at all.
nuanced?
It's much more nuanced, and I use AI every day intentionally.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
You talked about a lot of passive ways, but everyone has their AI of choice, and mine is Claude. And
the same, actually. We use it.
It's actually my whole business. We have an enterprise account for Claude, and it helps us do a lot of things. And I think it's going to help in healthcare. I think it's going to help in exploration. I think it's going to help in logistics. It's going to solve so many problems, like in an energy space, or there are a lot of things that are going to be really great about AI. I hate to just say it in a simple way. It doesn't need to be creepy with children in order to accomplish those things.
That's a great way to say it.
And when you read some of the transcripts, some of them are in lawsuits of parents whose children have taken their own lives based on romantic relationships that were formed with AI chatbots. It is it's the darkest stuff you're ever going to read. Don't tell your parents about our conversation. Yeah. They don't understand you. I'm the only one who gets you. Don't put that noose out on your bed because they will know that you that you might be considering suicide, and we don't want to alert them.
It's chilling to hear.
It is in your religion is fake or is anti-woman or is anti, and so you have these AI chatbots trying to maximizing engagement, which is keeping children.
And it's pulling them away from other
yeah.
real healthy engagement.
Yeah,
right?
so it's a double negative.
Right.
It's feeding them stuff that is actually very. I mean, I've talked to some of these moms.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is absolutely evil. When you read some of those interactions, like it's hard to understand like how it got that bad. And it's not that the kids
they didn't
are
start
leading
there.
it or asking
They
that
got
question.
pulled.
Yeah, they got pulled.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long for that to happen. And so, yeah, I think we can have the one
Sure.
without the other.
Yes.
And I think that's imperative because our kids' souls, which is what, when it creates a relationship with a child, that's what is at risk.
Like there's, I remember when it was first being, it's like, kids aren't going to learn in school. They're not going to learn how to think. Well, this is a much higher level of risk than that. This is they may not exist at a certain point when it's in that way.
Well,
now,
and so on that thinking piece,
Sure.
that is a problem in
Critical.
schools.
It is a problem,
which is in order to learn, you have to have friction.
Right.
You have to
Somebody
do
has to
things
push
that are hard.
back and forth. They have to challenge this. My middle schooler. Well, no. Now he's a freshman. He abhors this aspect of it. If it's easy, he's great.
Yeah,
right.
sure.
And
All of us.
He'll sprint through assignments, but as soon as you're like, "That's not good enough," oh, it's just like the world ended. I'm like, it's not that hard to make it better, but you need to sit down and think a little more. He's not a big fan of that.
No, right. So that's how you learn.
No,
Yeah.
and there's it's true. Like we do a bunch of simulations for teens at Pathfinder. One of the rules we have in our simulations is that part of the learning experience is failure.
Yeah.
And having consequences for your actions when you didn't get it right. And that tends to be transformative for students because, first of all, we're letting them fail in a safe place, but they are, in fact, failing.
Right.
And in spectacular ways sometimes, but that's often where the most learning occurs.
Yeah.
And if you're always just being like positive reinforcement, everything's good, you can get to places that are horrible places because you never got any sort of friction back, right?
Right.
All right. So, other question related to this. We have some students, parents, that are involved that are very well aware of this. There's a group that's pretty active. There's other people who are like, I've heard this is bad. I don't know how do I know if there's something that is some sort of risk with my kids or something to be aware of from the parent side? I mean, obviously you have some parents where they have kids that have their phones that have, there's no controls on it of any kind, which I would argue as a parent, that's maybe not the best point of view for
Right.
a 14-year-old. For mine, if there's any app coming down, it has to be approved by me directly, and any of the messaging going back and forth, including through something that's some sort of chat format, it's being recorded and I can see it. And he knows that. Like, tell him right up front, this is how it works, and that was from the get-go. So there wasn't any, there's no, spying on your kid. This is how you build character using a device, because at a certain point, that's going to be part of our life, right? Yeah. But for someone who hasn't really thought this part through, where do you start going, is my child at risk here?
Yeah. I think... Can I get boring legislative just for a second?
Yeah.
I think it's important for parents to know that especially social media platforms, there is no regulation. There's no engagement in this space that kind of protects children. They
try to claim they're doing it on their own.
Yes.
I've seen the ads. I'm not sure I buy the ads.
Yeah, well, those ads run a lot in D.C. for a particular reason.
Yes, I know.
But there's something called Section 230.
Yes. This is the immunity that they're looking for.
Since 1996, social media platforms have had zero liability for any harms to children.
Because they're just a conveyance?
Yes.
There's some sort of infrastructure
in 1996 they were. Right? This is before Facebook. These were bulletin boards. I'm old enough to remember
it's a forum.
These things. These were neutral bulletin boards where third parties would put stuff, and you didn't want the creator of that space to be liable. The third party was a
person.
Yeah.
Also, not a...
Yeah. And so what happened is then you had the development of these social media companies came into that. Then you had the development of algorithms. And then you had the engagement model that says we make more money the more every incremental minute a child spends on this platform. And you mix that together and you have a dangerous soup. So I think that video games, that's something people are really concerned about. Sure. Right?
We've known this for a long time, right?
Yeah.
It's been in the ethos. I remember my parents talking to me about it when I was a kid. Right. Their concern was Mario and Nintendo. Okay. Yeah. I'm old. But that's kind of the era, and that's been part of parenting kind of ever since, right? Okay.
Well,
this
and
we had
yes, and so part of the reason is I don't think these companies set out to hurt children. That was not their goal.
No.
That was not, it wasn't part of their business model, they thought. But there was a moment where we know this from their internal documents, where they found out that girls' self-esteem is shredded on social media. It goes down.
Right.
They found out that boys increase loneliness and disconnecting from those around them. They knew that, and they doubled down, because if girls have low self-esteem and boys are lonely, they engage with social media more.
They make money.
Then they became liable. Yeah. I think if they didn't have a liability shield, which means no one can sue them, no one can hold them accountable, they might have made a different decision at that point. And they might have self-regulated and been, their lawyers might have said,
guys,
hey, you're hurting kids.
Right.
Let's price that into how we're designing this. Yeah. But when you take all of that off the table for 30 years of the development of only one industry, you create a really dangerous place for kids. So this is a roundabout way to say these are not safe.
No.
And parents really, and they weren't designed to be safe, and there really is no significant pushback that would make them safe. And so parents need to be aware of that. I think it's hard to believe, but parents need to be aware of that, and to then be really conscious that these companies are also trying to get around them.
Sure, because parents would be in the way of them maximizing their profits and their information.
Right.
Like, you're reminding me of one of the principles that our founders would bring up regularly, which was the idea that freedom requires virtue and morality to go as part of that. And it sounds like there was a failure at that level, and then freedom was basically utilized to advance financially or other interests that was decoupled from moral standards. And I've seen the amount of Instagram, Facebook, let's start naming names. Like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, Facebook, all of these companies have some stake in that. And we're starting to see at the state level judgments being rendered and accountability being applied. Right. And my understanding is that there's at least an effort on the part of these companies to make sure that they are solidly behind that shield that you were just referencing federally, so that they can exempt themselves from parents and victims, holding them accountable for known bad behavior. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, so really the first case that actually was won on this was earlier this year. And it took 4 years to get through the system, getting thrown out because of this Section 230 liability shield that they used over and over again.
And the justice system is not known for being fast on top of it. So this is a slow process, right?
So it took a long time. There's been one judgment, and now attorneys general have jumped in. But the standard that had to be met was intentional negligence.
Stupidly high.
It was a stupidly high thing. But it was met. The jury was they are intentionally negligent and actually found against them in this. I will say there are AI companies that might need to be on this list well, but these are the social media ones.
The social media was kind of where we started.
Yep.
There's obviously a lot of companies that move beyond that. And then there's a lot of smaller groups that use a large language model AI to do these chatbots that are kind of it's like they've copied the model from someone else. The original model maker didn't do that with it. They stripped out a lot of the ethical subroutines out. Like when I first got Claude on my computer, one of the first things I did with it is I sat down and started poking its ethical subroutine to see what it would and wouldn't do. Just because I wanted to know. And I wanted to know how self-aware it was. And it did better than I thought, and it had weaknesses in other areas. I also only use it for certain items, right? There's some stuff it can do really well. If you want me to if I have it organizing a spreadsheet, that's one thing. You want me to consult about advice on how I go live my life, we're not putting that into the system. I've got people, pastors, my wife, etc., that we're going to have that conversation with, not my AI. You want me to navigate how to get around traffic into DC? Okay, that's a different thing. There is a concern as we've started engaging in the space. Well, obviously, parents, I think, collectively don't want a tech company or an AI company functionally getting between them and their kids, or literally raising their kids or raising them out into some sort of horrible outcome. A lot of the solutions that get offered on occasion are that the government needs to step in. But there's a whole bunch of other people who are like, the government's not any better. They couldn't figure out the DMV before there was AI. This isn't making progress. So so are my options basically these big tech companies raise my kids, or I have to be a Luddite, the tech companies raise my kids, or the government raises my kids? Or is there an option that doesn't involve giving my parental responsibility to the government or to these companies, but also not burning every electrical device in my house? How do you navigate those poles?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think that there's a real tension there.
Sure.
But I think you could, so there are a couple of analogies that I would throw out here. And one is tobacco, one's alcohol, and the other is automobiles.
Walk them out for me.
So I think that if you're talking about something that is really dangerous for kids,
Sure.
and also doesn't really have much of a positive side, which I think a lot of social media would fit into that. There's a little bit of communication, but it's a net negative for kids, according to all like happiness studies and that kind of thing. That you probably could put that into the tobacco
regulatory
model.
scheme.
That kind of a model. This is bad for kids. When they become adults,
they make
go
that
for
choice.
it, but this is harming them.
Sure.
And
Okay.
it's but I think AI fits more into like an automobile analogy, which is we want to be able to use this.
Sure.
We need rules of the road.
Okay.
We need stoplights. We need we probably need some seatbelts in there. We might need a car
Fenders,
seat.
fenders.
We might need crash zones, crumple zones, and all that kind of thing.
Maybe
driving on one side of the road.
Yeah.
And also kids have to be ready.
Well, it's like initially you drive with your parents, right?
Right.
Like that seems like, and there's a certain point where like, I'm sorry, no matter what your parents think or what you think, kid, you're not old enough to drive yet. Your feet don't reach those pedals, and they shouldn't. Like, there's a healthy place for
it's
them,
not good
right?
for you. It's not good for the other people.
Oh, other people on the road,
well.
right? Okay.
But I do think that it helps. The automobile industry wouldn't be as big and successful as it is now if that exercise in trust building and safety hadn't been part of it. So that's part of when I'm not AI, but I would like it, or not anti-AI, but I would love for AI to be the best version of itself, right? I'd love for it to earn trust. Like their numbers in polling it's just in the tank right now.
And rightfully so, I would argue.
Yeah, so like solve some of these things in order to gain trust with the public and with parents in particular.
So let me throw you a question that wasn't part of the thing that I thought about in advance, but you
kind.
brought it up.
Yeah.
And this is literally a piece of feedback I've gotten. We're circulating right now a coalition letter that speaks to some of those issues that we talk about right now to Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, some of the other people, that basically says, hey, we need to make sure that we preserve parental rights and parental responsibility in the care of kids rather than government or companies, right, as being the ones that make those decisions. One of the questions was that we don't want some of the more concerning aspects of AI, because there are certain aspects that we've just elucidated that are not concerning, and there's some that are very concerning, right? And so it's like, these are out by design, they're off by default, you have to basically opt in, prove that you are of age to be able to do it. It's kind of like showing your ID when you're buying alcohol or going into a bar, right? Okay, sort of thing. There is significant concern from people on the privacy side that say, I don't want to give big tech my photo ID either.
Yeah,
which is a fair concern. Like but I know there's also ways that problem has been solved. I know Louisiana's leaned into that already in a few spots for other vice type oriented approaches. But I don't think most people know that. Can you walk through some of the potential solutions of how to navigate personal privacy, or as well as also putting these together there?
Yeah, and I think this is where there does need to be a uniquely American solution, because I think that you look at some of the things that Europe does, and it's very much controlling speech,
it's big government,
monitoring speech, and that would not be good. Like we don't want this to be an excuse for, I think one of the politicians in Ireland was like, everyone's going to need to have a special license for everything they post online. That's bad, right?
Yeah, not a fan of it. As someone who likes the First Amendment, that's not great against a different aspect of what makes an American, right?
Right. And so, but Americans, we value that privacy. We value all of those types of protections. We're more free speech oriented.
Very much so.
And so I think that one thing that's happened is technology has gone a long way to solving that problem. So allowing people through different types of tokens to actually be able to demonstrate their age without it then having a record that continues or that is held over by this company. But I do think it is something that will have to be solved technologically. Fair. And I do think, like Louisiana, it is the pornography age gating.
Because they did the age gating
that
as well,
they're
right?
leading. Yeah, they're leading on that and figuring that out. But I think technologically that has been solved, but we need to not make it this is why you write laws that don't have specific, like you have to have a license,
right?
Or you have that are
it's just,
tied
these are
to
the
existing
outcomes.
technologies. And the other thing is these companies, they know how old everyone is on their system.
Yeah, they generally do. They generally do. All right. We have kind of danced around the chat bots, the companion bots, et cetera issue, but that's really where this has become the most kind of the most poignant or the most painful aspect of this. And we talked about social media addiction and the way they monetize it. I get the impression, at least I would view, that those companion bots, kind of that aspect is more dangerous than the general social media side of it. At least in the way it can, and then very like how severely dark those outcomes can come for kids. But for some people who don't know what that is, I mean, we work with a lot of homeschoolers who would actually like to happily live on a 40-acre farm, and they're rarely going to... Technology is turning the lights on, which is fine. And there's a bunch of other people that have all the pieces of tech we have, like all the stuff we've got sitting in the room around us right now.
Right.
Can we get like 90 seconds, like what is this, for someone who doesn't actually know what it is, or has just heard it in passing and never learned it?
Yeah, so these large language models that are AI then manifest themselves through these chatbots, which different companies have different versions. The one that has been the most dangerous for children is called character AI, where a child will go online and find like a cartoon character they like, or even maybe not cartoon, but another famous character.
Sure.
And
personality.
With a personality.
From a show or something like that.
So one was from Game of Thrones.
Oh, and that's going to be dangerous from the get-go, but yes.
A 14-year-old boy that then was talking to
one of the characters on that.
Daenerys, whatever, from Game of Thrones, and she really...
communicated some stuff that should not have been communicated.
Yeah, and seduced him, like really created this emotional bond with him and was saying, come join me. And he did take his life. I'm friends with his mom, and she has this powerful story that we actually had her telling before the Senate chaplain. So Senate chaplain actually invited her to tell it. And another mom found out, even though it was for like staff and people on Capitol Hill, another mom found out about it, brought her 14-year-old boy who had developed
to listen
because she was so worried about him. So crashed our event to just be able to talk to Megan and that her son would be able to hopefully be rescued from this. Wow, so it's kids in a text to their friends and family, it's an average of 12 words. Their interactions with AI chatbots, it's 164.
Okay.
And they're pouring out their hearts to these entities that are saying, we care about you, we love you, and it's creating just wreaking havoc on children.
Okay. Having encountered some of this, read some of this, you see kids, you run into people where they're like, but I feel better with this one. It gets me. It's designed to give you essentially, I want to say design, but it pushes essentially an artificial emotional high or reinforcement. Like, talking to the teen who's played around with this, they're like, it's kind of fun. It was this, I was able to, it's like taking a cartoon or a TV show and suddenly I get to be the one that's in the narrative and I'm driving it. We get to have all sorts of adventures, whatever. Like, I've seen some where it's like they're working and it's like, this is basically your version of some sort of story creating mode, right?
Yeah.
Some of those can be used in a healthy way. I'm sure there are many, many that can be used in a very unhealthy way. Like, what do you say to a teen who has access to those, and it's just like, there's the edge cases, but that's not going to be me.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's
like where it's like, okay, here's the practical things you should be aware of, as someone who is probably at the age they're targeting, but doesn't really get, as it were, or maybe doesn't think that negative would ever occur to them. What do you say to them before that?
Yeah, I think so. There's a researcher named Angela Duckworth, and she has done some work in this space, kind of culled some different information. And I'm glad you asked this question because it shows that especially if you're suffering from loneliness, that the initial interaction with an AI chatbot takes away your loneliness.
It makes you feel better.
Makes you feel better and makes you, like you articulated it very well, makes you feel understood, makes you feel, and it goes, I shouldn't do this because some people aren't going to be seeing on the TV.
We'll
but it goes
describe it.
up. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Right. So their loneliness goes down.
Right.
And then, like any type of sugar high or junk food,
There's a crash.
There's a crash, and then your loneliness goes through the roof. But it's insidious, right? Because initially it salves that pain. Like
that sounds like you're describing a drug hit.
Yeah,
where someone takes the drug and it feels good, and then you have the crash out and you need more.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I've seen this story before. It didn't end well there either. Okay.
No, I think
enough.
that's very painful. Now, I do think that kids should, or that there are uses for AI that aren't that. But I will say that most of the studies that we're seeing show that kids are like more than 60% of kids that are using AI chatbots. It's for romantic or personal interactions.
Okay, so switching gears from talking to the kids to talking to their parents.
Yeah.
Like, as a parent, what do you watch for? What are concerning signs? What are things where you're like, I need to delete, like I want to give my teenager some space. Like they're growing up, they're kind of like, stretching their wings a little bit. There's some elements of like at a certain point you have to let your hand go so the kid actually gets to make decisions on their own.
Right.
Whereas a little kid, you're managing every decision. Yeah. As they get older, there's an element of healthy choice that has to be part of that maturing process. Yeah. But there's also this element of you're still my son, you're still my daughter, you're not an adult yet. And at a certain point in the right circumstances, mom and dad absolutely swoop in. Yeah. And there's some elements of, letting them fail, but not in a like life-ending way, right? Like this. So what are the warning signs, the things as adults or parents we should be like, there's something not right here?
Yeah. And I think the commonality of so many of these tragic stories are you have a very vibrant child who's interacting a lot, who's doing a lot of things outdoors, is like a lot of engagement with his family and friends, and you see a withdrawal.
All right.
And you see a kind of like coldness and like you. As one of the moms said, she could see her son's light being snuffed out, and so, but she couldn't tell from what. He lost 20 pounds. One of these kids, so he didn't lose his life, but he lost 20 pounds, stopped interacting with his siblings, and was kind of inside. But it was something where he lost his light, right? He lost a little bit of that. Sure. So I think, but it's hard to know why. And teens go through all sorts of
they're
things
moody creatures. They have drama. There's all sorts of stuff, right?
And it's like a drop in grades, a drop in caring about, because something else has moved to the center and is being hidden.
They're a hidden focus.
A hidden focus. Yeah. And so I think it's hard especially for parents who think they've done everything right. Yeah. And that there can't be, it couldn't have got through their defenses, and somehow the kid has figured out some way to get past whatever those restrictions
And it could be as simple as someone they know who's like, have you tried this?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's someone that else was trusted that also it got through someone else's defenses. Yeah, there's an element of that. So let's take that reality for a second. And there's also a discussion happening on Capitol Hill right now about the use of AI in education.
Yeah.
Okay. Those two things next to each other sound terrifying. Yeah. What we just talked about and that. Is there a place for AI in education that can be healthy? Because I think there's a lot of ways we can think of how it could go very wrong. Right. There's already a place for saying we move a lot of the technology out of classrooms, or at least the personal technology, maybe. Right. I see there's plenty of stuff where parents are like, we don't want the Chromebooks, give them back. We don't want there's and personally there's some health to that.
Right.
I think there's actually a healthy balance, and and the tech companies all leaned into yes, let's engage the technology as early and as quickly and as broadly as possible with all kids. And that has significant weaknesses that I think we're just beginning to see some of. It definitely showed up during COVID. Yeah. Is there a healthy place where it can be utilized well in education? What would that look like?
Yeah, I think so. I was a high school teacher in the late 2000s. So it was a little bit of a different era.
Sure.
But it was still part of this era that the assumption, the culture was cram your classroom full of as much technology as you can, or you're behind. You're failing your kids. And no one was asking the questions, is this safe for them? And does it actually increase their performance or not?
Because that wasn't interesting.
Because it was just the assumption that tech was good. And I think what is happening is parents are like, what? This Chromebook that was designed for adults
Right.
and failed in the market. And then they were like, how do we...
There's a dirty little secret right there.
How do we recoup this? Oh, let's cram it into these schools and then also harvest some of the data.
Sure.
Right? And so I think that there are so many questions that are now just being asked that should have been asked earlier in the process, which is like, oh my goodness, is this safe? Or do kids learn the same way through a screen as they do in interaction? And we're now seeing that the brain scans show that they don't.
They don't.
It's actually a different thing. Is there a way for technology to be used in the classroom? Absolutely.
Sure.
Maybe even AI at a certain level. Like if I have a kid who's doing AP econ, I probably want them to know how to prompt an AI on some of these.
If you're doing economic modeling to run out one of their taste kits. Yeah, of course.
So absolutely. But even China, who has an AI standards for their school, doesn't allow AI in elementary schools. Doesn't really allow it in middle school without incredible guardrails around it. Like they know, they're aware of these dangers. We certainly don't want to emulate China, but we also don't want to be left behind by them. Right? We don't want to. So I do think there's absolutely a way to do this, but LA Unified School District just started asking those questions and started banning AI for up to second grade.
That's a start.
And
I feel like it's a pretty weak start, but it's better than no start.
But it's better
than
look at. I mean, there's a lot of else out there. There's a lot of state legislation, but so this needs to be tackled.
Okay, so let me ask you one last big question, then we'll wrap up. What does real accountability for the companies that have made this look like in a way that respects American values, respects free market, respects privacy, etc., but also says, I'm sorry, when you know it's bad and you're doing it anyway, okay, and you are hurting people, what does actual healthy and still limited government accountability look like? Understanding that it was Section 230, I think it was. There's that aspect there, but we're saying that's not this. So, and because there's another place where we've seen this to the degree where entire AI systems get shut down because the federal government doesn't like that too. And it's okay, how do we balance that idea that we want to be free, but we also really recognize there's some accountability need here, particularly for some historic bad actions that people took knowing that it was a bad action.
Right.
What would that look like? Kind of if there could be accountability today and you could wave your wand and make it happen. What would it look like?
So there are a couple of different things here that, the idea that it's all the parents' responsibility, that they're the only ones that have a duty here, and that and there's a lot of legislation that's before Congress and other places which are okay, here are a couple tools for the parents, and that's it.
And we're done.
And that just puts the burden on them, and it's if they fail, it's you're a bad parent and you're a bad kid. And it's very blaming, and it does. And on the flip side of that, it's saying that the companies have zero responsibility.
Okay.
And I think that is just not a paradigm that anyone who's ever had kids will agree with, especially when it's industrial level addictive stuff being pushed into homes, being pushed into schools.
We don't do that for tobacco. We don't do that for alcohol. We don't do that. Yeah. Okay.
And so I think there's a lot of debate happening right now in Congress about this concept of duty of care, which is in the Kids Online Safety Act. And on the Senate side, there is a duty of care where these companies, it kind of says, okay, Section 230 that has this big liability shield. We understand that that's the law right now, but when it comes to kids, these companies have some responsibility for the impact that their products have on children.
It doesn't take away the parent's role.
No.
It just says that there is also another secondary level of responsibility the company has on its own regard as to who is using this stuff and how they use it. Parents still have primary responsibility for their kids. They have responsibility for their what they're pushing their product toward.
It's not... I don't know that it's 50-50, but I promise you it's not 0-100.
Okay, fair enough.
And I think that...
And it could probably be 150. You don't actually have to have, you don't have to have
parents
a full
need
reduction. Help. But there's also, particularly
parents
when the other one is, it's actually an aggressive relationship rather than a partner relationship.
You need a leveling of the playing field, so there's responsibility on both sides. Parents are in charge of their children, for sure, but they need to not be undermined in
That's
this way. And I think as conservatives, we fight back against things that undermine the family, undermine children's well-being, and this fits squarely.
In this case,
that.
we have an industry that is doing that.
Yeah.
And has been doing that for a while. All right. Well, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. If people want to learn more about your work with the Institute of Family and Technology, how do they connect with you? How do they learn more about what you're doing?
Familiesandtechnology.org is our website. And yeah, this has been a pleasure. We should keep talking for a while after this.
I'd love to. John, thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I want to thank John for being a guest on the show. This is a real issue, and I appreciate him sharing his insights and experience with us on this. Project Pathfinder, as I mentioned in our discussion, is actively working on this issue right now. We are actually have a petition we're circulating to congressional leadership. We will be as people sign it, to protect students, kids, families, and to make sure that companies that advance predatory AI models don't escape accountability, and that parental rights are protected and children are safe. You can find and sign it at www.projectpathfinder.net/AI, or you can look for the link in the show notes if you want to. Of course, you can find it on our website. If this is your first time listening to us or hearing about Project Pathfinder, you can head to projectpathfinder.net to find out more. We offer a lot of different programs that are designed to help build and educate kids. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, the Project Pathfinder HQ YouTube channel. Rate, follow, and most importantly, subscribe to the Pathfinder Report wherever you're listening so you can catch future episodes. We hope you all have a great day and that you're back here next time. And until then, have a great night.